We're not talking about the best of them. We're just talking about the rest of them.
Not the worst parts, but the best parts. And the best parts we have. The best of the rest.
Hello, and who are you?
Luigi Mario. What? You got a problem with that?
Welcome to Best of the Rest, the show where we take a second look at movies that were poorly received upon release and challenge ourselves to only talk about the things we like and what the movie does well. This week, we are talking the 1993 film Super Mario Bros. My name is Chris Logan, and I am joined, as always, by the highly evolved reptile, Andrew Williams. You ready for this one, Andrew?
I am. No
Awesome.
notes.
No farther comments. I am ready. Let's jump into it. Man, I'm so excited to talk about this movie. Never in my life that I think I would be in this position, co-hosting a podcast where we're talking about everything that works in the film Super Mario Bros. Personally, this is a movie that I have been familiar with basically my entire life. I think I did see this in theaters, though I admit I don't have like a vivid memory of that happening. I do remember seeing the big standee for the film advertising at a movie theater. I remember seeing, the big M with Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo standing there. I think I saw it in theaters, but I don't remember that. But I watched it plenty of times afterwards on VHS or on TV or what have you. It's a movie I watched a lot as a kid. Although watching it again for this podcast, there was quite a long gap between me watching it over and over again as a kid and watching it now. But plenty of scenes that burned into my memory, I remembered 100% and will probably remember for the rest of my life. What about you, Andrew? What's your history with this film?
Yeah, it's another one that's been around. I mean, it came out in 93. I was 6. So, I mean, I don't know if I saw this in theaters, but I know it's been around most of my life. My mom loves this movie. She went and saw it at Alamo and was they did it a couple of years ago, and she was not happy that the host kept saying how bad it was. She has loved this movie for a long time.
I'm here because I appreciate this film. Why is everyone laughing?
Genuinely, honestly, that was my mom's attitude. She was kind of annoyed that the guy kept saying it was bad. She's like, I like this movie. I think my brother went with her. Yeah, so it's been around my entire life, basically. And but there is a big gap. I have not revisited it in some time, and wow. This is a weird movie that just exists. Like, the fact that this movie, from inception to release, exists as it does is wild. It's such a weird movie.
Yes. It is absolutely bonkers. I use that term fairly regularly with certain movies, but this is like the epitome of a bonkers film. I wonder if this wasn't based on a video game, if this wasn't based on Super Mario Bros, it was just like its own thing. I don't know if that would make the movie weirder, or is it weirder that this is based on Super Mario Bros and this was the end product? I don't know which one is more strange, but either way, what we got is just bonkers. Absolutely bonkers. Of course, this month, the month of July, on our podcast, we are covering various video game adaptations that were poorly received upon release. It starts here with Super Mario Bros. And we should acknowledge we were introduced here, beginning this episode, a brand new theme song. So thank you so much, Mitch of Depressed to Impress, who has been doing our music for a while now. Got a bit of a remix, a new tune to kick us off.
New vibe, new feeling.
Yeah, new feeling. We had a new era of our show, so I think it's only appropriate. Once again, the wonderful Mark Benavides providing those sweet, sweet, smooth vocals. And Mitch even getting in on the vocal action, a little bit of the background vocals there. So really a collaborative effort from people all across the country. You ever think about that, Andrew? Like, you and I live in opposite ends of the country. And then we've got Mark involved here and Mitch. This is really people from all over coming together to
from everywhere.
create something beautiful, create some art. Hey, let's talk about Super Mario Bros. The movie was released May 28th of 1993. Big summer blockbuster this was intended to be. Made on a budget of $45 million. At the box office, it only brings in $39 million, which I was a little surprised by. I actually thought this was a modest hit. In my mind, like the strength of the name Super Mario Bros., I thought carried this movie a ways, but no, this absolutely bombed, did not even make back its production budget, and is panned by critics. Holds just a 28% on Rotten Tomatoes. Pretty low score. Some people might expect something lower from that. I do have to point out, as is the case with a lot of movies of this time, especially ones that bombed at the box office, that is only taken into account 43 reviews. Whereas movies released kind of in the current era, in the internet age, get upwards of a few hundred reviews. So that skews the numbers a little bit. When only 28% of 43 reviews are positive, that only amounts to how many reviews, Andrew? What's the math on that? What's 28% of 43 reviews? Do you know?
It would be about a fourth, and of 43, that would be like 10 or 11. And it was a 20 what?
28%.
28%. So you're probably looking at 12 to 13 reviews.
That would recommend this movie across the entire country. Not well received. Not well received by audiences either. Fans of the video game did not understand what they were seeing on screen. Parents that took their kids to see this were not happy. This is just poorly received in every way imaginable, I think it's safe to say.
Yeah, it's not something that made a huge impression. And in fact, if anything, its legacy these days is don't do that. If we're being honest, this is kind of pointed to as like getting it all wrong. But hey, that's not what we're here to talk about, folks.
The movie's written by the writing team of Parker Bennett and Terry Runte, as well as a writing credit from Ed Solomon. Now, Ed Solomon is a very accomplished screenwriter, wrote movies like Men in Black, one of the greatest films of the 90s, Now You See Me a little bit more recently, that Magician movie, and helped write all 3 Bill and Ted movies, so very impressive filmography to his name. But those other 2, Parker Bennett and Terry Runte, a much more limited filmography. You're not going to find many more credits beyond this one. This movie's production is very strange and very strained. Had a lot of trouble getting to the big screen. Goes through a lot of different hands. So we're looking at a script that was originally by this writing team that gets punched up a little bit by Ed Solomon. He was brought in to try to improve what was there on the page. How much is done by him is kind of hard to say, as we'll talk more about kind of the production of this movie, but off to a rocky start already. Just going through the writing credits.
Yeah, it's it wasn't the first script that was written for a Mario Brothers movie, but it's ultimately the one they get. I know Barry Morrow wrote a script at one point. He wrote Rain Man. I mean, imagine Barry Morrow's Mario Brothers script. That would be very strange. But yeah, this is a movie that just struggles pretty much from start to finish to really get anywhere. And yeah, it's a tough road. I
mean, a Super Mario Bros. Movie in the early 90s makes a lot of sense. The property is super hot. Video games are in this new sort of era that started with the NES. The NES kind of kicks off this new home console version of video games, and they actually start to have a bit of a narrative, even if the narrative is as simple as protagonist beats antagonist. That being said, though, Super Mario Bros. Is a platformer video game with a very thin story and not much lore, so it is still an uphill battle to try to craft a narrative around these very simple games. At the release of this movie, the most recent Super Mario Bros. Movie was Super Mario World for the Super Nintendo. This movie is most drawing inspiration from Super Mario Bros. 3 and Super Mario World, and if you're familiar with those games, you're not working with very much beyond a few characters that have names.
Characters that have names, and the princess has been captured. That's pretty much it. Everything else is just a through line. So some might see that as an opportunity. There's plenty of room to kind of fill in the gaps. So I think some would see that as a chance to kind of jump in and be like, okay, let's take all of these set pieces and kind of combine them into something with a story.
And they do fill in some gaps, to be fair.
They do.
Like, they answer questions like, how do humans end up in a dinosaur world? Or why are they called the Super Mario Brothers if Mario is his first name? They tackle these questions head on.
The hard-hitting questions that we all had.
The movie's directed by the duo of Rocky Morton and Annabelle Jankel. Now, they were married at the time. They are not married anymore. And you could probably look to some of the stories from the production of this movie to kind of get some clues as to why they are often at odds with each other, giving different direction to different actors. It was, by all accounts, an extremely frustrating time for all involved. The stars of this movie have had nothing positive to say about the directors or about the process of making the movie. The directors haven't had much work since this movie. And I was surprised to learn, actually, though, before the movie, they were the creators of Max Headroom, which is a very strange character of that era, and is a very strange connection to make between Max Headroom and Super Mario Bros. But look, we're going to jump into the movie itself here shortly and talk about all the positives, all the things that works, the things that we like. But when discussing the production of this movie, there's really not many nice ways to talk about what happened here. No one really has very kind things to say about this part of making the movie.
No, and that's true. And it's worth noting that Morton and Jankel were not the first choices for directing this film either. This is one of those films that was offered to a variety of people. Greg Beeman of License to Drive was offered at one point, that then one of his films failed and they pulled him out. Harold Ramis of endless fame was apparently offered the direction position at one point. And he declined and then reflected that he was glad that he didn't say yes to it. I think Danny DeVito was even offered both the role of Mario and the director's chair at one point and turned them both down. It was something that you would almost, dare I say that they were being sent a very clear message that nobody really wanted to do this. But nevertheless, they persist and they end up landing on Morton and Jankel. I can't say the creators of Max Headroom with George Stone, want to give him some credit there as well, would be the first. I mean, obviously they were not the first choices, but they weren't necessarily who I'd envision as directing a Super Mario Brothers movie. But at the same time, maybe that's kind of what you were looking for at that point. Somebody that was going to try to think outside the box, and outside the box they went.
I mean, yeah, basically the studio gets the rights from Nintendo to make a Super Mario Bros. Movie. And it's like, okay, this is a hot property. What does it look like? Let's throw some creators at this and get this on the screen. And this was the end result. And this is the reason that Nintendo was very hesitant to license out its characters to movies for a very long time. We do have a new Super Mario Bros. Movie finally coming to theaters, I think next year. It's going to be animated this go around with Chris Pratt taking over from Bob Hoskins, or taking over from Charles Martinet from the video games. But it'll be interesting to see what that looks like. I know Nintendo is much more involved with the creative process there versus this movie here, where it was like, yeah, you can use our property, go nuts with it, and there wasn't really much oversight from Nintendo, which is something that they learned from.
Yeah.
But, Andrew, I think it's time that we cross that threshold, jump into the movie, and only focus on the positives. You ready?
I am ready.
Roughly 65 million years ago, a meteorite struck Earth in what would later be known as Brooklyn, and sent the dinosaurs into a parallel universe where they evolved into intelligent, anthropomorphic beings. In the present day, A woman named Daisy is being hunted by members of the dinosaur world, and when she is captured and taken to their world, she is followed by her new friends, the Mario brothers. Now, Mario and Luigi must traverse the dinosaur world and its many characters to rescue Daisy from the evil Koopa, who plans to use an artifact in Daisy's possession to merge the dinosaurs with the human world. Straight from the video games, Andrew.
Yeah, straight up.
I expected nothing less.
That's a. Did you copy and pasted that from Mario 3? I think so.
That's tale as old as time. Oh boy, we're going to jump into it. Of course, the positives, focusing on the best parts of this movie. Before we jump into all those scenes, though, we're going to focus on the cast, starting with our favorite casting and best performance of the film. Every week, we recognize one person who goes above and beyond the Call of Duty with a performance, and they actually raise the quality of the entire movie. We recognize that person by giving them the Mark Strong Award. Andrew, kick us off. Who's getting your Mark Strong Award for Super Mario Bros?
This was a tougher decision than I thought, because despite all the troubles, I think there's a lot of people who do sort of understand the assignment here and are really just kind of having as much fun as possible as they can with it. That being said, I got to go with the man, Dennis Hopper, as King Koopa, as my Mark Strong for this movie. He is first off, he's Dennis Hopper, greatest actor of all time, from Out of the Blue to Apocalypse Now to Blue Velvet. He's fantastic. Dennis Hopper is great in pretty much everything he's in. Rest in peace, Dennis Hopper. But he is really like, and like, just the idea that Dennis Hopper plays King Koopa in this movie is so ridiculous to just say out loud. But he is really running with it. Like, he is thrown into this ridiculous, insane world where the whole concept of this dino world is so strange to me. And we'll talk about it more when we get to like scenes and stuff. But just the idea that dinosaurs also evolved into humans in this world, so they're humans, but they apparently have dinosaur ancestors, is just so ridiculous to me. But he runs with all of it, never seems out of his depth, never seems like he's missing anything. He's just running with it, chewing all of that gross fungus-filled scenery with every single bit that he can. I've always remembered the scenes where he orders the pizza for some reason, just because it seems so ridiculous. Because like he's literally trying to like merge the worlds and take over our dimension, and then at one point he just stops to order a pizza, and then they just keep like bringing, like, it's a gag. It's like a recurring third gag, of the movie. Yes. Like, he orders the pizza, then he wants to know where the pizza is, and then the pizza's finally arrived. And then the fact that he's like, oh, and spicy, make my pizza spicy. So just the idea that in this world that diverged from our world 65 million years ago, there's still pizza. Pizza is eternal, Chris. That is the lesson here.
There is pizza, and he's a smart man for ordering toppings, because that's how you improve any pizza. And
I don't know, Chris.
I do find his toppings interesting, though. Here's his Koopa's pizza order: dino, lizard, hold the mammal, no worms. All right, he is a dinosaur. He is a reptile, and on his pizza, dino meat and lizards. Things that make you go, Andrew. I mean,
Chris, he is the bad guy.
But the pizza place is the pizza place the bad guy, because they have those toppings as an option.
But at the same time, he has evolved into a human from a dinosaur, so he himself is not a dinosaur.
So you're saying this is the equivalent of like us eating monkeys
on a pizza? Which, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to do, Chris. This is terrible.
Never tried it.
It's not at
Who
all.
knows?
It's not at all. This analogy has gone terribly wrong. I'm ejecting immediately. We're moving on.
Well, I also noticed that Koopa has like a reptile skin suit. He's got like scales in his suit.
Like scales.
So it's presumably made from members of his species in one way or another. I don't know.
Maybe it's fake and he just likes the aesthetic. I don't know. I don't want to judge the man, but he is the bad guy.
Dennis Hopper being in this movie, which I think is the most prestigious casting. I know Bob Hoskins is also a big name and everything, but for whatever reason, in my head, I'm like, okay, Bob Hoskins, a Super Mario, yeah, I can kind of see that. Bob Hoskins in a kids movie, yeah, Roger Rabbit, it makes a lot of sense.
Hook,
but Dennis Hopper being in this movie, playing the big bad guy, reminds me of like Tommy Lee Jones doing Two-Face because his kid likes comic books, right? It seems like Dennis Hopper's like, oh, I guess I'll do so and so a favor. I'll be in this movie. And he doesn't phone it in. Like he plays up being the bad guy, but it's just so jarring that like Dennis Hopper is in Super Mario Bros, especially with that hair that they give him, the gelled.
Oh my God.
What do you call that? I think Mario calls him a ridge head at some point. He's got these ridges in his hair that's just so wild.
So
you look
weird.
at Bowser from the video games, then you look at Dennis Hopper as Koopa. It's like, sure, okay, that's a human
strange.
Bowser. Why not?
Yeah, I guess. Like, it's such a weird thing. But yeah, like if you watch Blue Velvet, which is a David Lynch film, so your enjoyment of that will rest probably on how you view David Lynch. But like, he's the villain in that movie, and he's like terrifying. Like, he is a genuine like monster in that movie. And so like have it go from that to this, I'm just like, okay, you cast him as the villain, cool, but like, who in the room was like, you know who should be King Koopa? Dennis Hopper. And I guess to be fair, he said yes. So I mean, he came on board, but he is running with this as far near like everything that I can. He is going hard, and he's being asked to do a lot and exists in a very strange world. And at no point do I get the vibe that he's not on board with what he's doing.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, Dennis Hopper, R.I.P., as you said, great actor, great bad guy. The first thing I can remember seeing Dennis Hopper in is Speed, the Keanu Reeves movie, which I really enjoy from the 90s. And he is an awesome scenery-chewing bad guy. It is, no joke, pretty similar to his performance here. Obviously, this is a kid's movie, and there's the pizza jokes and everything, but a quipping bad guy that's kind of cool. Speed is just a grown-up version of Super Mario Bros, I think is the point I'm trying to make here.
Without the dinosaurs. Maybe with the dinosaurs. I don't know what's happening there. But yeah,
Andrew,
man.
That's a great pick for Mark Strong Award. I respect it. I myself am going with someone else, but I love Dennis Hopper in this movie. I have to give it to one of the heroes, though. I'm going with John Leguizamo as canonically Luigi Mario, his name in this movie. I love John Leguizamo. We've talked about him a number of times on our show. He's actually received the Mark Strong Award before with his role as Violator in Spawn. Another great performance from the guy in the 90s. But I like what he's doing here as Luigi. I like both of our heroes. I like Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo. But Bob Hoskins as Mario is a little more one note. He's kind of doing the same thing throughout. It's not a slight at Bob Hoskins. That's the way the role is written, and it's good. But John Leguizamo gets just a little bit more depth. He gets the love story with Daisy. He's the one that figures out the fungus is trying to help him, and he's trying to convince Mario of that. And he just stretches legs a little bit more. And he's got kind of the Robin role in the classic Batman and Robin setup. The point of Robin is that it gives kids a cipher. A cipher to be like, yo, I'm the person alongside the hero. And that's how I've always viewed him in this movie as a kid. Like, I want to be Luigi. I want to be the guy along for the ride who's teaming up with Mario and getting the girl and taking down the bad guy alongside Mario's adventure. And he's definitely filling that role here. He's the younger of the two, and he's the guy you want to be as a kid. And if we're being honest with ourselves, the guy you want to be as an adult too. I want to be John Leguizamo. I like what he's doing here. I
agree. I think he gets a little bit more nuance and a little bit more growth in his part. I mean, like you said, you get to hang out with Mario. You get to learn how to be a plumber. That's just a great life skill, Chris. That's just good to know how to do. But no, I mentioned to my brother that we were doing this movie, and he was like, "Oh, John Leguizamo coming in for 2-time Mark Strong Award winner."
Yes,
he knew it. He knew it at the offset. And then he immediately stopped and was like, "Oh, but maybe the villain." Like he painted that
He called
picture
it.
from day one immediately. But yeah, this is a great performance. Like you said, Luigi Mario had to establish his name, had to make sure that we know why they're the Mario brothers. But yeah, he's another guy that's just having a blast with this. They're doing ridiculous, insane things, and at no point does it feel like he's not on board with it. Yeah, who wouldn't want to be Luigi? Luigi gets to wear green, not red. I don't know. Does that make me look like an elf, Chris? I don't know.
He was Super Mario Bros. 2. I always pick Luigi. He's got the higher jump. I like the way he kicks his legs. He's flying through the air. He's, in my opinion, the best character in that game. So I do have a little bit of a connection to Mario. I can see, Mario.
Did you say Mario Brothers 2?
Yeah. 2 is the one where you can pick your character.
I understand that, but 2 is not the one that I hear anybody talk about ever. So
no, but that's the one where I get to play as Luigi, is what I'm saying.
That's true.
It's a fine enough game. We don't need to go off on that tangent, but also we can't forget Mario Kart and how cold-blooded Luigi is in that game with his classic stare down. So he's got a lot of character. But hey, let's talk about Bob Hoskins.
He's got Ghostbuster games now, man. Luigi's awesome.
That's a funny way to describe those games, but accurate. I like it. Bob Hoskins plays Mario. Again, canonically. Mario. Andrew, I've been laughing at that joke for nearly 3 decades now.
I say it never stops being funny because it's one of those things where it's like nobody was asking this. Nobody really needed you to do this, but you did it anyway. And for some reason, I can't stop laughing at the fact that you did it. And you did it this way. Like his name is just Mario twice. So fantastic.
Bob Hoskins is a great pick, though. You mentioned Danny DeVito being up for the role. I can totally understand why they would look at Danny DeVito for this role, but Bob Hoskins, also great. I guess we should acknowledge at some point that, again, canonically, the Mario brothers are Italian, and neither Bob Hoskins nor John Leguizamo are Italian. And if you have an issue with that, I'm not going to argue with you. Point noted. But moving on from that, I like Bob Hoskins as Mario. He's got the stature. He's a little bit more rotund than John Leguizamo, obviously shorter. Older, gruffer, has a great mustache. What more do you need in a Mario?
You don't. Hoskins, again, not necessarily the first choice. But then again, a lot of people, the final film is not a lot of the people that were approached first. Apparently, Dustin Hoffman was interested in this, which would have been... Can't even imagine that. But Dustin Hoffman, Super Mario Brothers... Danny DeVito, like we said, was offered it before we land on Hoskins. Even some of the other roles. I know Arnold Schwarzenegger and Michael Keaton were apparently both approached for Koopa, which would have also been insane. And apparently Tom Hanks was considered for Luigi. Just such a strange... Like, this movie is already super weird and strange, but it could have been so much more super weird and strange.
Their only requirement for playing Koopa is you have to be the greatest actor of all time. They're just going down the list of the all-time greats.
It's genuinely like, my God. It's like just one of those things where the more and more you get about it, you're just like, my God. And but yeah, Bob Hoskins here. I mean, like I said, everybody knows Bob Hoskins. Roger Rabbit, Hook, everything. But yeah, he's got there's not a lot of growth to Mario in this movie. Not there needs to be. Like you said, it's how the character's written. But he has some good lines. Like I said, again, I couldn't tell, for better or worse, from the final product. Like, I wouldn't have known anybody had a miserable time on this production, because that's kind of how they all describe it. But the final performances, everybody's invested. Everybody's like delivering what needs to be. Bob Hoskins winds up a bomb and lets it free with the gravitas of an Oscar winner. But yeah, I mean, it's a great performance, but like you said, it's a little bit more static throughout the course of the film. Like, Leguizamo just gets a little bit more to dig into. But yeah, I really like Hoskins in this role. Just everything. Some of the lines he even says, where like Daisy mentions Danielle, and he's like, "Danielle, I promised I'd take her to WrestleMania." And it's like, why are you saying that now? Like, what are all the things to be thinking about in this moment? Which I guess that would be 93, so WrestleMania 9? Well, Not going to that one means you won out there, Mario. So don't worry. But yeah, I like the performance.
Andrew, hang on. You just said that WrestleMania in 1993 was WrestleMania 9. I myself find that a lot of people might find that impressive that you can recall that. But let's show off your brain a little bit more. What is the main event of WrestleMania 9?
It is Bret Hart versus Yokozuna for the WWF Championship, which means actually technically the main event is Hulk Hogan versus Yokozuna for the WWF Championship.
And how does that go down?
Well, Bret loses to Yokozuna. And then afterwards, Hulk Hogan comes out for some reason. And then Yokozuna's manager, Mr. Fuji, challenges Hogan to a match where Hogan beats Yokozuna in like 80 seconds, something ridiculous like that. Then holds the title till King of the Ring and drops it to Yokozuna.
Anything else on that card from WrestleMania 9 worth noting? Or that you can spew from the top of your head?
I think Undertaker Giant Gonzalez is on it, which is the only Undertaker streak match that ends in a disqualification.
There you go. Look at this, folks. Andrew, do you ever wonder, like, what could be in your head if it wasn't filled with comic book and wrestling knowledge?
Every day.
Impressive. Sorry, I just wanted to give you a chance to flex those muscles.
Sure.
Our listeners think you're that much cooler now. I promise. That's how it works.
Yeah.
Spew wrestling knowledge out like that.
Okay.
How about Samantha Mathis, who plays Princess Daisy? In this film, Princess Daisy is a dinosaur, Andrew, and she was brought to our world to be kept safe with a piece of the meteorite. Of course, the meteorite piece that she has is the key to merging the two worlds together, so it's important that she is kept safe here in Brooklyn. But
Chris.
Yes.
They're not dinosaurs. They're evolved from dinosaurs.
So what would you call them?
Would you call all humans you meet apes or monkeys?
Everything is dinosaur themed in their world. There's Dino Donuts. Why would they call it that?
Because it's a heritage thing.
Andrew, how should I reference their race, their species? If
they're still humans,
inaccurate?
they're just dinosaur. They're just humans descended from dinosaurs.
They're humans? You would say they're humans?
They call them humans.
All right. Samantha Mathis plays a human that was a descendant from a dinosaur.
Sorry.
And
I'm
she
sorry,
does
folks.
a great job. I like that Samantha. I like that Princess Daisy is. I mean, obviously, she's the princess that gets captured. That's the story.
Yes.
But as we like to point out, anytime it occurs, she gets to do more than just the damsel in distress. She gets to hold her own at times, get to be autonomous, make her own decisions at times, and get physical when she has to. There's a bit of an emotional part to her story because she is her whole life thought she was abandoned and an orphan, which technically she was, but she learns kind of the reasoning behind that and who her parents are and that her father is the king and that she is a princess. And in a movie that doesn't try to swing for the fences with its emotional depth, she gets to carry a few of those scenes and she does a good job at it. She gets a romance with John Leguizamo, and at the end, it's not happily ever after. She decides to take her place as princess in the dino world, and I've got to give the movie props for these things of not resorting to simply being she's a love interest that was captured. They try to add nuance and other stuff to her character, and Samantha rises to the occasion with her performance, and it is good, Andrew. It is a good performance.
Yeah, a lot of people will question maybe why they went with Princess Daisy and not Princess Peach, the more noted princess from the Mario series, but that's because Princess Peach is Mario's love interest, folks. Princess Daisy is Luigi's love interest. So they made the right call with the story they were telling. Don't be upset. That is why. Mario has to take Danielle to WrestleMania. He hasn't met Princess Peach yet, apparently. But yeah, it's a really good performance. Like you said, though, she gets to do stuff, and that's all, it's always great to see these situations where it very much could be a damsel in distress situation where they get to jump in the thick of it and do their own thing. The end of this movie has her showing up like fireball gun in hand, asking for their help for some new challenge. And as weird as this is, it's a bummer we never got to see that.
I'm still waiting for that sequel. Bring it.
Yeah.
I guess God, we didn't say R.I.P. Bob Hoskins, but R.I.P. Bob Hoskins.
R.I.P.
right?
Bob Hoskins. I mean, Koopa's goo now, so that's fine. Doesn't worry. But yeah, we have to get around Mario there. But just do the gritty 30 years later sequel where Mario's dead and Luigi's all bitter. Just it's fine. It'll be fine. But yeah, I do like this performance a lot. Samantha Mathis, I've seen, she was in Thomas Jane's Punisher film as Maria Castle, so and even still out there now doing things. But here she's she's up to the task. Some weird stuff getting thrown at this character. She's ready for all of it.
Gotta give a shout out to Fisher Stevens and Richard Edson, who play the characters Iggy and Spike. They are Koopa's goons. They are sent to capture Princess Daisy, and they are throughout the film as a comic relief. They're the classic goofy bad guys. They are Bulk and Skull, I think is a pretty accurate comparison. They are genuinely cracking me up for most of their scenes. I think they play this to perfection. So again, got to give them both credit for that. And I think it's a good time to acknowledge that Iggy and Spike are characters from the video game. That they don't look like humans. There's a lot of characters in this movie that look like humans and are played by humans, but in the video game they are various enemies that you come across, and they kind of incorporate their look into their weird hairdos, but otherwise it's just one of those weird decisions they make in adapting this movie of giving like these human forms to all these Mario villains. But genuinely like what they're doing here. I do get a lot of laughs out of it. It works for me. Shout out to these guys.
Yeah, I do like that they get evolved up. That at a certain point, King Koopa is annoyed at how dumb they are, and so he puts them in his evolution machine and actually it gives them advanced evolution and it makes them smarter. Then they immediately proceed to drive their car off a cliff. So
all it does is it makes they sound smarter because they use words like peculiar, but their actions are exactly the same.
They do exactly the same thing. It was very funny to me. It was similar to the Mario saying this car has no brakes, like where 2 minutes earlier he very much just used the brakes. But yeah, these guys are great. Obviously Fisher Stevens and Richard Edson have been around for a long time. Fisher Stevens for dozens of things. But yeah, they consistently get laughs out of me. I think that's a good way to describe it. They are leaning into it as good as they can. They get the weird relationship with King Koopa where he basically just abuses them the whole time because they can't do what he asks them to. But yeah, they're having a good time, and I'm having a good time watching them.
Fiona Shaw plays Lena, who is working with Koopa, but then tries to go into business for herself towards the end of the film and merge the worlds once Koopa is demised. And she's got a interesting role in her relationship with Koopa and Princess Daisy. I watched this movie with friend of the show, my wife, who had never seen it before. She agrees it is bonkers. She was quick to point out that Fiona Shaw is in the Harry Potter movies as Harry Potter's mean aunt. So, obviously, long career before this movie and after this movie, still they're working. But, yeah, Fiona Shaw's in this movie, Andrew.
She is. Yeah, she was in all of those Harry Potter movies. Most. Yeah, she was in a good chunk of them. But she's been working since the 80s. Very long and storied career. Appeared all over the place. She's fantastic. She's always good. Killing Eve, she's on that for a long time. She was in True Blood. She's shown up all over the place. Yeah, she gets a little bit of an interesting arc here because she's like along for the ride with Koopa, but she's got this weird kind of insecurity / jealousy towards kind of what he's trying to do, and decides to try to take the power for herself and ends up getting fossilized in the process. So, unfortunate.
Mojo Nixon plays Toad. Now, Mojo is a musician, and they make Toad a sort of counterculture street singer in this movie. Again, Toad, we know Toad from the video games. He's the little guy that dresses like Aladdin and has a big mushroom head. Yep. In this movie, he's a human, but his haircut is like a spiral to try to I guess look like a mushroom. I don't know what the connection is here, but
Yep.
I like the performance. He gets turned into a Goomba, and it's pretty sad. But we get to follow which Goomba he is because he still has his harmonica around his neck, and he helps out our heroes. I guess I should note that when he is a Goomba, he's no longer played by Mojo. Mojo just plays the humanoid version. But regardless, I like his little tunes, his songs that he sings before he's arrested for speaking negatively of the government in this weird world that we're in here. But yeah, Mojo Nixon.
Yeah, not a lot there, but he's another guy that I don't know if he came up with those songs himself. I don't know if that was all him or not, but it almost sounds like he's coming up with them on the spot. But yeah, fun stuff.
Francesca P. Roberts plays Big Bertha. This is a role that really left an impression on me as a kid. I really like this character as a youth. She plays Big Bertha, which in Super Mario Bros. 3 is a giant fish that eats you in one bite. But in this movie, she's just a woman wears red with spikes on it. That's their interpretation of it. But she is at first kind of at odds with her villains, but then ends up helping them out because she's kind of got a thing for Mario there. She refers to his pudgy buns at one point in a scene that's very funny. I like this performance though. It's a lot of fun.
I do. And this is another one that stuck with me as a kid. We're not going to dive into why. I'm sure there's a lot of therapists could dig into there, but we're not going to.
Bro, that dance scene where Mario's trying to get the piece of the meteorite back from her off her necklace. Cut the sexual tension with a knife, I tell you.
With a butter knife. But yeah, she ends up kind of at odds. Like she sees that they're trying to get this piece of a meteorite and she has it. It's kind of steals it from them at the beginning. And then later they kind of reconvene. And like you said, she seems to have taken a liking to Mario. So she ends up helping them out and giving them some sweet thwomp boots to escape from Koopa's goons. Those boots, as a kid, I wanted those boots so bad. But
100%. Another part that really stuck with me. Those boots.
I wasn't sure what they were supposed to be, but then I saw definitely this time they're branded thwomp. So again, that's another moment of taking something wholly unrelated and just moving it into something else. But yeah, this is a performance. Like you said, she's a giant in the game. It's a giant red fish, and in this one, she just dresses in red spiky clothes and seemingly has a thing for our boy Mario. And yeah, it's a fun performance. It's not a lot, but I dig it.
All right, let's round out this cast here. Of course, we got Frank Welker playing who else? Yoshi, who just makes various dinosaur movies. Oh yeah, he plays the Goombas as well. So any dinosaur that is actually a dinosaur, not a humanoid, Frank Welker makes his weird dinosaur voices because, of course, he does.
Yep, it's Frank Welker. What'd you expect from him?
Dan Castellaneta, who is an alum of the show. We talked about way back on our Fantastic Four episode because he oddly played a teacher in that movie. But most famous as the voice of Homer Simpson is the narrator of the movie, but only narrates the first 2 minutes of the film in a very weird animated opening. It's very strange. He gives us the exposition about the meteorite. What did he say? What if the meteorite didn't kill the dinosaurs, but created a parallel dimension where they lived on their own and evolved? And he gives us that little spiel. Yeah, of course. What if that happened? I never thought of this. But yeah, Dan Castellaneta there. And then, Andrew, we've alluded to this scene already. One of the most famous scenes of the film where the Mario brothers are being asked what their last name is. The person asking them, Sergeant Simon, is played by Don Lake, which I never realized, of course, until going back and watching this movie. Don Lake, we've seen in every Christopher Guest movie, playing various roles there. He is currently on the Netflix show Space Force, where he is very funny. He is Steve Carell's assistant there. But yeah, I had no idea that was I guess in 1993, obviously I wouldn't know who he was, but it's fun to go back now and be like, this iconic scene of the film features Don Lake.
Don Lake?
That's pretty fun.
That is pretty fun. Yeah, he's a guy that if you look at his face, you have absolutely seen him in something. He's one of those types 100%. Of actors. He is out there and he's everywhere.
Andrew, we've already talked about the scene. We're about to jump into scenes, but since this one keeps being brought up, can we talk about how weird this scene is?
It's so weird.
Not just because it's like, why are they the Mario brothers? It's answering that question. What's your name? Mario. What's your name? Luigi. What's your last name? Mario. Mario. We all know the scene. They're Mario and Luigi Mario, and it's weird. While he's asking them these questions, there is a woman giving him a back massage with her foot that has a high heel on it.
Yep.
Andrew, why? Why is
what
that
is going on? I have no idea.
It's
so
not explained.
weird.
It's not acknowledged. It's such a bonkers thing. Oh, that whole scene of them getting booked.
It's so weird.
Look, we're going to get to it because now it's time to jump into the scenes of this film, but we're going to
I can't believe you're leaving out the king.
Oh, okay. Let's talk about the king. For most of this movie, it's played by Fungus. But then at the end, for some reason, he goes back to his human form. Played by Lance Henriksen. Andrew, since you're calling me out here, what do you have to say about the performance by Lance Henriksen as the king in Super Mario Bros., Andrew?
Love those plumbers. It's just, this is one of those things that's so ridiculous to me because he is genuinely on screen for less than 10 seconds. He has no role in this film. He is seen throughout the film. He is seen as like, apparently Koopa devolved him into a fungus at some point, and his way of getting back at him was to infest the whole world with fungus and make everybody miserable. But I just, it's so weird, but he changes into Lance Henriksen, and I was genuinely like, wait, whoa, no way, what? And then he's not, and then like, there's no PS where he comes back, there's no anything that he like reappears later. He's literally here, and he goes, I'm back. Love those plumbers. And that's it. That's it. That's all he says. That's all there is to it. Lance Henriksen, obviously, like, I mean, he's been around forever. Horror films, sci-fi, everything, Aliens, Pumpkinhead. Even video games, stuff like Detroit Become Human. He's all over the place, but I just genuinely am like, what? Was there supposed to be more here? Like, that got cuts? Like, I just have no idea. But the fact that he's genuinely in this movie...
Give me the Henriksen cut.
Give me the Henriksen cut. But yeah, it's genuinely one of the strangest things about this movie to me. And this is a movie full of strange stuff.
Let's jump into it, Andrew. Let's jump into this movie. Now that we gave respect to the king, apologies for leaving him out.
How dare you?
Let's talk about what we got. Let's talk about the positives and what we'd like, starting with our favorite scene of the movie. Andrew, in your opinion, when is this movie firing on all cylinders? What is the best scene in Super Mario Bros.?
I don't know. I think I kind of have to go with the nightclub scene just because it's so insane. The lead up to this is they have now run into Iggy and Spike in the desert. And Iggy and Spike have basically, now that they're smart, they agree that they need to get rid of Koopa because he's awful. So they're kind of helping them now. And they give them these clothes to get into this nightclub so that they can go to Big Bertha and try to get the rock back. You get these extended dance sequences where, like, a cover of Roxy Music's Love is the Drug is playing. Like, weird stuff. Like, it's the thing where I'm like, if you turned this movie on in the middle of this scene, you would never have any indication that this was a Mario Brothers movie. You would have, there's no iconography, there's no anything working in your favor to establish what this movie is. But at the same time, like, I can't help but just be amazed by it. So we get this weird extended dance with Mario and Bertha. We alluded to it earlier where he's trying to get the rock from her, and some very suggestive things, sometimes some not so suggestive things. Like, he's like literally trying to get it off the back of her neck, and she thinks he's like tickling her neck or something, and she has no idea. And then it finally kind of all goes wrong. Koopa's goons show up, and she kind of ushers them into her office, gives them the sweet thwomp boots that are powered by bullet bills. They're cramming in everything they can here. All the cartridges for the boots
I did, Andrew.
bills.
I didn't even notice that. Yeah, the cartridges, because you got to put cartridges in to use them to jump. Those are little bullet bills. How did I not catch
bills.
that? That's fun.
They're bullet
That's
bills,
fun.
and I wasn't sure what those boots were supposed to be at first. I thought they were the boot from Mario 3, the Karibu shoe or the Goomba shoe, whatever you want to call it. But they, like I said, they just say thwomp on them. So I'm like, all right, I guess they're supposed to be thwomps because they do drop down and slam, I guess. But
Andrew, I gotta say, honestly, as a kid watching this movie, in my kid mind, I'm like, okay, this is an official Super Mario Bros. Movie. This is like the story as it's meant to be seen. This is canon, right? This is made by Nintendo. It has to be. So to me, I thought I was seeing like what the video games were trying to imply the whole time. So like they get these boots. I'm like, oh, this explains how Mario and Luigi can jump so high because they actually have these special boots on. Like I thought this was like telling us the whole lore behind it. Oh, the dinosaur world, the emergency. I was trying to like in my head connect the video game and the movie, assuming this movie was some kind of like, you know, official telling of the Mario story, when it is in fact anything but that.
That is impressive. But I never quite thought that because I had Mario 3 in my head after watching this, so I assumed, because in Mario 3 there's these things you can jump on, you can steal, they jump around in this boot.
The green boot, yeah.
The green boot. In the original version, I think it was called Karibo Shoe, but now it's just like Goomba Shoe. But so I thought it was supposed to be a take on that, like that, because that thing lets you jump higher than you otherwise could. And so I thought that's what it was for. But nope, on the bottom and everywhere, like you even see a display of them later. They just say Thwomp. So I'm just like, we're just working in all the names and everything that we can. But either way, they use the Thwomps. They get to escape and kind of move into that sets us into the climax, essentially, where they break into Kumba Tower and get the appropriate color matching suits. I don't know what the red suit versus the green suit means as far as the Koopa janitorial staff goes, but yeah, this whole scene is just insane. It's like a fever dream in the middle of this movie, of a whole movie that's kind of a fever dream. It stands out to me for that reason.
I really like the scene. One of my favorites as a kid for sure. I love the synchronized lizard dance. All of the humans that evolved from dinosaurs that are dancing there do this like lizard inspired dance. It's almost like Thriller-esque in their movements, the kind of movement, like in their hissing, like in time with the music. So bonkers. We get the classic 90s tune, Everybody Walk the Dinosaur, plays in this club, which, Andrew, what is it with the early 90s and dinosaurs? Obviously, you get Jurassic Park in 93. Is that when Jurassic Park comes out? Same year as Mario Bros?
I think so.
So that alone is weird because, like, obviously they didn't make this movie all dinosaur inspired because of Jurassic Park being a big hit because they were in production at the same time.
Right.
It's clearly something they lifted from the video games, but you get this movie, you get Jurassic Park, you get that straight-to-video movie Prehysteria about the little boy that has those little dinosaurs that we all watched a million times. You got Theodore Rex. You got We're Back, A Dinosaur Tale. Dinosaurs were so hot in the first half of the 90s.
I actually remember a film, Chris. I'm looking it up right now just to make sure that I'm right. But this was a 1992 film called Adventures in Dinosaur City. And I do not know if you remember this film, but what that film is actually unique for is that a kid ends up in another dimension where there are humanoid dinosaurs. So it was a very, very strange thing that I had on tape. Oh, it's 91 actually. But yeah, this kid ends up in an alternate dimension. And
I just did Google images. I have no idea what this is, but it looks wild.
They get sucked into the show they're watching, which features anthropomorphic dinosaurs.
It looks very much like the sitcom Dinosaurs. It was called Dinosaurs, right?
Yeah,
not the mama.
Same production value. Yes.
Yes. Which I guess that was a late '80s sitcom, right? Or was that early '90s?
Yeah. I think that was early '90s, or it ran into the early '90s at least.
We get the idea though. This period of time is all about
dinosaurs. Were in dinosaurs so hot right now. But I don't really know. But yeah, everybody was all over dinosaurs. And I was all for it because I love dinosaurs. I still love dinosaurs. I got down to the field.
Andrew, did you know there's a Dino City Super Nintendo game?
I did not.
The game is loosely based on the 1991 made-for-television American film Adventures in Dinosaur City.
What?
You gotta track this down.
I apparently do. My afternoon is set.
Let us know how it is, Andrew. Great pick for favorite scene. Like I said, that's definitely a standout of the movie. One I always liked. One I liked as a kid for sure. what I'm going to go with for favorite scene, it might be cheating a little bit because it's kind of a string of scenes, but I love the Mario Bros. Breaking into Koopa Tower at the end to spring Princess Daisy. This is like when the movie really starts feeling like Mario Bros. To some degree. They get their somewhat classic look. They get Mario gets a red and blue jumpsuit. Luigi gets the green one, so it kind of, they're not overalls, but it kind of looks like their look from the video games. It's a look that I really like. I think it's a solid adaptation from the video game look. I like that Mario has his classic hat, but Luigi has like a green ball cap to distinguish them a little bit. I thought that was a lot of fun. And it's just, a lot of this movie, it's clearly a kid's movie, right? It's clearly made for kids and trying to entertain kids. But a lot of it, I wouldn't say like I wouldn't show my kid because it's inappropriate. It's just like, this is weird. This isn't, this isn't like, but this scene in Koopa Tower, I feel like is really nailing that tone of being a fun kids movie. From them being on the elevator with the Goombas and making them all rock back and forth to the elevator music so they can escape. Like, that's just good, wholesome fun. I really like the escape sequence when they find all the women that were captured because they were looking for Princess Daisy and they were just capturing like any woman in Brooklyn because they didn't really know what Princess Daisy looks like. And they're being held in like this cold storage for whatever reason.
Well, no, he shut off the heat, man. That's why it was all cold.
Oh, thank you, man. How could I miss that? There's a great line of dialogue there because Mario breaks in and his girlfriend is being held captive there, the one that he's going to take to WrestleMania 9. And he says, I love this line, Andrew, "You must be the missing girls from Brooklyn." And one of the girls answers, "Yeah, except for Darla. She's from Queens, but she's all right." It's totally unnecessary, but it's a fun little joke in there. And they escape by pulling off the air vent to this giant tube, which is now frozen over. And they take one of the mattresses, and they all slide down the tube, the girls and Mario. And they get chased by the Goombas. There's a group of Goombas on a mattress chasing after them. I love the scene. I love the slide. I love Mario like pulling out his wrench and putting it in that hole so the Goomba mattress hits it and flips forward and sends them all flying. It's just fun. It feels like the movie kind of like finally delivering on the premise and the promise made by making a movie based on this kid's video game. I think it all works without any hint of irony or any hint of I'm laughing at how bad this movie is. I think it's the most genuine string of scenes in the movie. Them all escaping Koopa Tower. And that's what I'm going to pick for my favorite.
I think, I agree. This is all really fun. This, like, my scene kind of leads directly into this, because right after this, they kind of get into the basement of Koopa Tower, and that's when they turn the heat off. And they get their suits, they get the good looks and everything. And then we get the kind of extended sequences where they kind of split up to save the day. But, because to this point, interestingly enough, Mario doesn't actually know Danielle has been captured. Like, he doesn't actually know this, because he would have no way of knowing it. So that's why he says the line about WrestleMania, because he's like, oh man, he thinks he's just forgotten they were supposed to do something. And she's like, no, she's here. She's been captured. And he's like, oh. So, but yeah, this is
where
all just a really
did
fun
WrestleMania
sequence.
9 take place, Andrew? If they live in Brooklyn, is that something they have to travel to?
They would have had to travel, yes. I'm trying to remember exactly where it was at, because it was outside. Because if you remember, it's like daylight outside when all of that
I do
goes
remember
down.
that.
So
And
probably,
WrestleMania 9, also the debut of JR. Is that his first event?
I think that's
With
his first major event,
WWF?
yeah. So, yeah, I'm trying to remember where that was. It was probably California or Florida, based off the fact that it was outside. I remember it had like the Roman theme. I gotta look. It's bugging me now.
Yeah, JR's like wearing a toga. It's so
Yeah,
weird.
like super, super strange. It was in Paradise, Nevada, so not California, but Nevada. But yeah, this whole sequence is a lot of fun. Like, there's a lot of, like you said, we get fun chases. Like, obviously, even some of this stuff you could see is like the sliding down a tunnel, like trying to avoid the Koopas that are coming behind you. Like that's something that feels like it could be a video game level, stuff like that, where you're trying to avoid these things. And it's like you said, if there's a moment where it feels like we're trying to get to that kind of idea of a Super Mario Brothers movie, this is definitely where it kind of hits. And it keeps going. And it pretty much runs through the end of the movie. There's a lot of fun action sequences here. And yeah, it's a blast.
Andrew, the beginning of this movie, like I said, there's a lot of scenes that are burned into my memory. Most of the ones we've talked about already. But the movie starts off like in Brooklyn, in the real world, and it takes a minute before we get to the dinosaur world. And I gotta be honest, I didn't remember any of these scenes. Scenes in the real world with like the double date and everything. And I'm like, because honestly, I'm trying to remember if I owned this movie on VHS or if I just saw it a ton because that's what you do as a kid. It's on TV or whatever. And I'm wondering if I always caught the movie like after it already started and maybe I didn't watch it from the beginning. Or if I just thought these scenes were boring as a kid because it's not the dinosaur world. I don't know. But I did not... I knew it started in Brooklyn, but we stay in Brooklyn for a lot longer than I remember happening. I do like seeing the Mario Bros. Like being plumbers, which is like in the video games, they're plumbers, but obviously you never see them being plumbers. You always see them like on adventures. Right. And the only really reference to them being plumbers is they travel in pipes. But here they have a van, they have a business. There's like a rival plumbing business. There's a quick shot inside their apartment where they have like a rack, a plunger rack on their wall that's holding like 4 plungers on it. Andrew, do you think that's like an award that they won? Or is that like they have different plungers for different purposes and they keep them on a rack in case of emergencies?
I don't know. I couldn't even begin to understand.
Not the weirdest decision made in the movie, to be clear.
No, definitely not. But definitely a strange moment. Because they're basically like, they're plumbers that are getting this what is it, Scarpelli?
Oh yeah, the rival group that takes all the jobs.
Because Scarpelli has not just got a plumbing company, he's also the developer trying to mess up Daisy's dinosaur dig site. So like he's this implied mafia type guy that like has basically got his fingerprints all over the city, but he's slowly driving the Mario Brothers out of business. Because apparently in New York, when you call a plumber, you call several plumbers, and whoever gets there first gets the job. And the rest of them are just out of luck. And so like Scarpelli is like coming in trying to sabotage the dig site. That's actually how they end up jumping across the dimensions. But yeah, this whole sequence is kind of just building up that they're plumbers that are like about to get evicted. Like they're not necessarily bad at their job, but they're just down on their luck. So, the implication seems to be that when they get back, and now that Scarpelli is a monkey, that business picks up, I guess.
Monkey. There's a scene that stood out where their van breaks down. And they're working on the van, and it's overheating, and Mario goes into like a shop to get water. And when he comes out, he's complaining because he had to buy a bottle of water. And he yells back, because like, who doesn't have tap water? Everybody has tap water, but he made him buy a bottle of water.
$3.
And Andrew, I don't remember. What am I trying to ask you here? I expect you to know everything. How long has bottled water been like prominent? Because like now it's kind of the norm. Like you buy bottled water, you get bottled water in your fridge. You're expected to buy a bottle of water. But me growing up, I drank a lot of tap water, and I felt like bottled water was kind of like becoming the norm throughout the 90s and was kind of a novelty for a while. Or like if you had to travel somewhere, grab a bottle of water, sure. But like at home, you just drink tap water.
Yeah, I agree that it seems like the 90s is really where that started taking off and becoming a thing. Because I think that was when you started hearing a lot more stories about how the tap water has all the weird crap in it, the fluoride, all that stuff. You don't want to be drinking all of that. And I think the 90s is really when that takes off, which is funny because it reminds me of this is a bit of an aside, but there was a comic creator once upon a time. His name was Jack Kirby. You may have heard of him. But he wrote this comic called he wrote the comics. Yeah, did some indie stuff at Marvel in the 60s. But he did this comic in the 70s called OMAC. That was kind of a retake on Captain America, but much more science fiction tinged. But one of the plots of one of those comics is literally a guy who bottles up the world's water and tries to sell it back to us. That was literally the villain's plot, was bottled water. And and that was genuinely like the villain of the story. And it just reminds me of that.
Was the villain named Nestle?
No. He just did not quite that on point, but close enough. But yeah, so that's literally barely 20 years before this. The idea of bottling up water and selling it was a supervillain plot, as far as most people were concerned. And nowadays, as such. And so it is unto you. But yeah, I caught that line too, and I was like, oh man, I was like, that must not have been a thing yet, because like, and I know by the time I went to college, like I would just buy bottled water at the grocery store by then, and that was the mid aughts. So I know by then it was pretty common, but I'm guessing the 90s and is really where that starts to take off.
I find it very interesting. We established Super Mario World as the most recent Mario game when this comes out. To travel to the dinosaur world, they jump into what looks to be a solid wall, but is actually a portal that takes them to another world, which is the exact gimmick used in Super Mario 64, released after this movie. You gotta wonder, Andrew, if as much as Nintendo tries to disown this movie, if they looked at that and thought, you know what, that is kind of a cool way to travel to another world. Let's use that.
You have to wonder.
But we get introduced to the Dino world, and it is like an underground version of New York, I guess is what they're going for. And this movie has a modest budget. It's not small, but it's not huge either. That $45 million, it's right around the Batman 89 area, for a quick comparison. But it doesn't look cheap. In fact, it looks kind of expensive. Almost everything we see in the Dino world is like sets that had to be built and constructed and are very detailed and very extravagant and very large in a lot of cases, especially these like, street scenes. And they are packed full of little details and Easter eggs and neon lights. And I think this movie has a pretty cool look to it. Hashtag Positivity Podcast. You can criticize that it doesn't look maybe like the video games, but it does look pretty cool.
I agree. It's a very cool look. Makes it unique. Like I said, is it what you envision when you think of Super Mario? Maybe not. But it does create a very unique look. And that's one of the things that I've remembered about the film for all these years, is just like, even the cop cars, how they have like the plow thing on the front of them. Like, and there's no windows, there's just bars, stuff like that. It's unique aesthetic choices that made the film more memorable. But like you said, just looking around anything, you see tons of Easter eggs. Like I said, there's a display of the boots, and you can see that they're called thwomps. Even the Bob-omb stuff, I do remember this vividly as a kid when the Bob-omb is walking around at the end. They show the bottom of his feet at one point, and it has a Reebok logo on it.
Dude, I laughed so hard. I thought that was hilarious.
I thought, again, me too. I thought that was hilarious. Because, like, it's not like this thing is actually wearing shoes. That's literally just the feet of this thing, and they've still branded them as Reebok. But a lot of stuff like that, the work was put in to make this, because the idea kind of here is that it's the city, and then the rest of the planet is a desert. Like, that's kind of the implication here. So they've got this city, and that's it. And yeah, a lot of these exterior sequences manages to take place on a very specific track of this city. But it never feels like we're on like a limited thing. There definitely feels like there's a world here, and yeah, it's a unique look. That definitely has stuck with me for years now, just how visually unique all of this is.
I love that as many departures as they have for like the looks of these characters and environments. Bob-ombs, spot on. They look right out of the video game. It's a little black bomb with feet that winds up and walks slowly, then blows up. They nailed that.
Nailed it first try.
The cars, speaking of the cars in the Dino world, seemingly don't run on engines, but like bumper cart power. Like they have the pole that sticks out the top of them that touches the electric rail to make them go. a little bit Mario Kart-esque, maybe. I'm kind of curious if there's some influence there. And at one point, you see like a street sign that says Koopa Turnpike, which is, I'm not sure if that's an exact level from Mario Bros, exact track from Mario Kart, I should say. But it definitely has a feel of like a Mario Kart track. So again, this is a year after the first Mario Kart was released. Maybe an influence, maybe some Easter eggs, or maybe I'm just looking a little too hard. But I definitely, especially with that Koopa Turnpike, definitely was feeling some Mario Kart vibes.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think, I mean, God knows, this movie is just I'm sure if you analyze it frame by frame, there's probably some kind of Easter egg in everything, so that wouldn't shock me whatsoever.
Now, Andrew, we all know Goombas. We all know Goombas from the video game. They look like mushrooms. They're like sentient mushrooms. They're little guys that just walk slowly. They're not the most intelligent villain.
Mm-hmm.
This movie's take on Goombas, it's a little bit different. They're a little bit larger. Very large, in fact, but have a tiny reptilian head.
Yes.
I don't know how you get from A to B here, other than maybe like their head, like in the video game, that's just their head walking around. I don't know. I'm trying to connect the dots. I'm not sure. For the purposes of this podcast, I also don't really care, because we're just talking about what we get on film. And what we get on film are these giant, broad-shouldered, dumb creatures with tiny, tiny reptile heads. Are kind of scary, but kind of cute at the same time.
Yeah.
Remind me very much of Beetlejuice, whenever Beetlejuice gets his head shrunk at the end, or just sitting next to the shrunken head guy that kind of has the exact same aesthetic. I like these guys. I really like Toad Goomba. I really like them as like the foot soldiers for the Koopa clan.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned that slide scene is really fun. It's a departure, sure, but I like this look, and I think other than being different from a classic Goomba, it's a good move.
Well, I think it is just riffing on the kind of big shell, tiny head. I think that's just the riff it's making, but it goes in a very, very, very long direction away. But yeah, I like.
Well, a big shell, tiny head. That's a Koopa Troopa, Andrew. That's different.
Oh,
Goombas are the little like mushroom-looking guys. So maybe it's combining those because we don't see Koopa Troopas. So maybe it's kind of.
We don't. It may be. I was testing.
Maybe the.
Past. But yeah, it's one of those things where again we're just taking some ideas and kind of mashing them all together. I do like the Toad, because obviously Toad doesn't look anything like Toad, but I like the idea that he presents as a Goomba, that showing that even as a Goomba, he still maintains some of his humanity. So even as a Goomba, he is still sympathetic to Daisy. Like, she asks for steamed vegetables, and he goes and he gets them. It's literally like, it's so sweet and so adorable. And you're just like, and then like he catches on fire while she's escaping, and she makes sure that he gets extinguished. She doesn't let him suffer. And it's just warms the heart.
I like the running thread throughout the movie that Mario has been a plumber his entire life. He knows everything there is to know about plumbing. Luigi is still a bit of an apprentice. He's still learning. And Mario kind of just gives him these tips on plumbing throughout the movie. It comes up a lot, the ability to be a plumber. And he's got this one line. Like, their tools come into play a lot. And Mario drops this nugget of wisdom that I'm going to remember for the rest of my life. He says, treat your tools like your friends. Keep them by you, and they'll always be by your side. It's pretty nice.
Yeah.
I think we can all learn something from that, Andrew.
I think it's a lesson we could all take. Yeah, we could all take something from that.
Stitch it on a pillow.
Because at one point, Luigi loses all of his tools. He has an empty tool belt, which is useless. Because when they are in the basement trying to turn off all the heating valves, Luigi ends up like hurting his hands. And that's when Mario comes in with his tools and is like, use the tools, man. Your tools will never let you down. So yeah, remember that, folks.
Towards the end of the movie, Elena is trying to merge the worlds herself. And it backfires. She tries to put the little meteorite into place to merge the worlds, and she gets electrocuted, thrown to the wall where she becomes bones, like embedded in the wall.
Fossilized.
And Luigi, great line here. Man, she sure makes an impression. Got a good laugh out of me. I liked it. Very good. We get a lot of our special effects here towards the end of the movie. We get to see Koopa get de-evolutionized, and he turns into somewhat like his dinosaur form before just becoming goo. We get the effect of the worlds merging briefly, where they get like Thanos snapped. They get like dusted to go from the dino world back to the real world. A man turned into a monkey, as you alluded to earlier, as the onlookers just laugh at how funny it is that
we never get any implication that that's undone either. Like, it just happens, and it's like he's stuck that way.
But of course, our heroes save the day. A news reporter refers to them as the Super Mario Bros. So we all get to point at the screen and say they said the thing you mentioned earlier. We get this nice tease at the end where Princess Daisy comes back to the Mario Bros. All battle worn and holding a giant gun and says we got to go take on a new threat. Sequel TBD. And that's our movie, Andrew. It is last week's episode, question of the week, was asking us about guilty pleasures. And although we agreed that we don't really feel guilty about any of them, any movies we like, this probably falls into the spirit of that category for me. Whether or not it's nostalgia, the fact that I grew up with it, it's a bonkers movie. It's a lot of fun. And if you're solely rating it on its accuracy to a 16-bit video game, then it's probably not scoring very high, but
no,
it's ambitious and a good time, and better than it should be considering the production story. I can at the very least say that about this movie. But it's one that I, to this day, I gotta be honest with you, I had a good time watching it.
It is a movie that, like, genuinely, honestly, I don't know. I think even the directors were like happy, but even the directors themselves, it just felt like there was a lot of tension. But Mathis said that people remember her for it, and as an actress, what more can you ask for than to do a part that people still remember fondly years later? Leguizamo did a statement, I think, in 2013 that was like kind of glad that people looked back and were kind of being a little bit kinder to it. Obviously, Hoskins and Hoffer have been less forthcoming. Again, rest in peace. But it's definitely a movie that the fact that it comes out looking like it feels it feels unified. Like I said, nobody feels like don't want to be there. Nobody feels like they're phoning it in. Everybody's kind of running with it, and I think that's a great thing, and it shows in the final product. I think you do have a movie that comes together, and like you said, given the troubled production, that's pretty impressive.
Video game movies, Andrew, I had to say, they don't have the best reputation, I think is a nice way to put it. But as we established, I have fun with this one. And next week, we're going to be talking about Lara Croft Tomb Raider, the first Angelina Jolie adaptation. And Andrew, as of this recording, I've never seen that movie. Have you seen that one?
I have. My parents are big fans.
Your parents love... I hope they listen to the show, because we're talking about like all their favorite movies. You should definitely you should talk to them, see if they can give you a Mark Strong Award winner favorite scene, and bring it next week for that episode. And I'm excited to talk about it as we continue our month of poorly received video game adaptations. But for now, it's time for our question of the week. This week it's from Reyes in our Discord, who asks, what's the best heel turn in cinema? Nice, simple, to the point. A heel turn, obviously. I think Reyes is asking in the spirit of wrestling terms, but
yes,
for anybody who may not know, is turning bad. A person that you think is good that turns out to be a bad guy. So, what's immediately coming to my mind, Andrew, is A Good Day to Die Hard, because we talked about that very recently.
Last week.
Our episode last week. And there's a great heel turn there, where a man that you think is on the right side turns out to be the big bad of that movie. And it's done, no joke, extremely well. But is it the best in cinema history?
Probably.
Maybe not. Any other examples coming to your mind, Andrew?
I'm curious about this one. And I want to hear your thoughts on it because I think this one's deep. Would you consider the end of Memento a heel turn?
Wow. Huh.
Or
Are we
was that
spoiling
or would
Memento?
that even go further as a double turn?
Interesting. Because you've got your opinion on two characters changes at the end of that movie, right? What you're
Yes.
saying?
So I guess if you've not seen Memento, you can turn off the show right now. But
Okay, let me address Teddy first. Joey Pants. I don't think that's a turn. I think he's still bad, I think. He is what he's doing is very illegal, and he's covering up murders, and he's taking advantage of Lenny, even at the very end of that movie. So I don't think that's a turn.
yeah, but they're all bad.
Yes, yeah. That's why I don't think it's a turn, though. But
Right.
but Lenny,
So Teddy is unchanged is the point. Like he's still doing
he's
what he
just
is.
a different shade of bad.
We just have more context to what he's doing.
Right. But Leonard, I should say, he doesn't like being called Lenny. Is he? Yeah, I mean, yeah. Throughout the most of the movie, he's our hero. We think he's a good guy. I think he's trying to do the right thing. But we find out, man, I think technically yes. I think I'm gonna. That is a heel turn. Yeah, that is a revelation that he does not have altruistic motives. I think is the simplest way to put that.
Yes. I just
And
thought about that.
if you haven't seen Memento, go see it. It's one of the greatest movies of all time.
It's the peak of, not the peak, but it's Christopher Nolan's best film. He's got a lot of good films. This one's the best.
It is very good. Yeah, that is a, I was not thinking that. Heel turn is, immediately, I'm like, oh yeah, there's probably a ton of them. It's a little bit hard to think of some, because I think of like Darth Vader, but like Darth Vader's always been bad. I know we got like the prequels and then again turning bad, but I don't really consider.
But you knew it was going to happen.
Sure, yeah. Good heel turn. I'm not the
Harvey Dent in The Dark Knight.
That one's pretty good. Yeah, because obviously you know the character, you know what's coming, but that is pretty good. And I guess a heel turn doesn't have to be like an instant. Like that one kind of evolves over time, which I think is a good way to do it. Whereas like our Good Day to Die Hard example, it happens in an instant. We just find out,
right.
Oh, this has all been a facade. Whereas Harvey Dent, it's someone who is genuinely good that slowly becomes bad over the course of the movie.
Yeah.
For events of the movie. So there's, I guess, two different versions of a heel turn, but yeah, that's a pretty good example. I like that one. Reyes wants to know the best in history, though. That is just a lofty question. I'm gonna have a hard time picking one as like the number one.
There's a couple in the MCU, probably.
Here's a recent example, and it's gonna sound silly, but if you've seen the movie, I think you can follow me on this. Green Goblin in No Way Home.
Oh, I don't think that's a stretch at all. I think that is a great example.
I just, he's an established villain. We know he's a villain. We know he's gonna be bad. But that movie, throughout the events of the movie, the way it lays out is it looks like he has been rehabilitated, and then he snaps and goes back. And I'm going to put that way up there on my list of heel turns not because it's a surprise, obviously. We probably all knew he was going to end up being a bad guy again at the end of the day. But Willem Dafoe's performance, which we talked about extensively on our Spider-Man No Way Home episode, Best of the Best, go check it out if you haven't already, plays that to perfection. And you can see on his face the change from good guy to bad guy, just with his smile, and then his voice changes. So well done. One of the best in the business. And that ranks very high for me on a moment where someone's turning bad.
I agree. That is a good one. Greatest of all time, though, man. That's the lofty thing. It's like, man, how do you even begin to establish that?
What about Mission Impossible 1? Jim Phelps.
Oh, that's a good one. That is a good one. When it turns
like
out Phelps is bad.
In the movie itself, I think it's really good. And then if you look at the greater lore, that's a character that was a good guy for decades before finally turning heel, which I think is pretty interesting.
Yeah, we had that whole discussion. But if you presume that this is the same Jim Phelps, then yeah, it's 30, 40 years of service. And now he's suddenly disillusioned and he basically turns on his whole team. That's good. That's really good. And that one plays better. Like, you could say something like GoldenEye. It's kind of similar, where 006 turns out to be the villain of the piece. That's all I'll tell you for the sake of the fact you haven't seen it. I don't think you've seen it.
I have not yet, no.
But it's a similar vibe, but with the Mission Impossible one, you have the decades of lore that establish before it that make it all the more devastating, or whatever you want to call it. Whereas something like that, it's almost immediate. It's tough to be like blown away in the same way because there's just not as much going on.
Those are the ones that are immediately coming to my mind. But if you have a better example, please let us know. What do you think is the best heel turn in the history of cinema? Let us know in our Discord. There's a link in the show notes. Just click on that link. Join our Discord. It's free. Doesn't cost you anything. You get to hang out with us and fellow nerds talking about nerdy stuff like the best heel turn in the history of cinema. Let us know your pick in there. Shoot us an email, bestoftherestpod@gmail.com. Hit us up on Twitter or other social media. And while you're there, while you're surfing the net, head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave a review for this show. I always ask, go one step farther, leave a review for every podcast that you listen to regularly. It's something fast, free, and fun that you can do that the creators are certainly going to appreciate. I know we appreciate it. We certainly appreciate this review that received from Zavazda, who says, "Great show. I've listened to every episode that I've seen the movie for and have been watching movies just so I can listen to the Best of the Rest crew. I was worried initially that there wouldn't be much depth of conversation without the ability to criticize the movies, but those fears were unfounded. Always a great convo, and always leaves me feeling better than when I started. Download and listen." That's great advice, Avaza. Download and listen. Hey, you, listening to my voice right now? Download more episodes, please. Thanks for the review, Zavazda. Very sweet. Zavazda is in our Discord. He has joined that community, so by all means, come and join us. Join the conversation. Leave us those reviews. We're going to read it on a future episode. We all love to hear it. And until next time, just remember that maybe not every movie is great,
but all movies have greatness.
Thank you to Mark Benavides for singing our theme song. Follow him on Instagram at NotThatMarkAnthony. Thanks to Mitch of Depressed to Impressed for the music and that kick-ass new theme. Check him out on YouTube and Twitch.tv. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. It's the only way we're going to grow. And follow us on social media at BOTRcast. Thank you. I like how they take him out. I love Mario pitting like his... Hi, Brucey. Hi, bud. Come here. You want to say hi?
Hey, Dada.
Hi, Brucey. Can you say hi, Andrew?
Hello, Bruce.
Hello.
Hi, Bruce. Yeah, my headphones.
So, best of the rest.
Us.
Best of the rest. All right, close enough. All right, say bye. Say bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.